Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today I am coming to you all with a review for A Quiet Place Part 2, directed by John Krasinski, and starring Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmonds, Noah Jupe, and Cillian Murphy. So naturally, this is a sequel to the first film, 2018's A Quiet Place. And in that film, we were introduced to the Abbott family, who are all forced to navigate and survive in a post-apocalyptic world inhabited by blind alien creatures who rely on their hearing to hunt and kill. And now, following those events, the Abbott family now face the terrors of the outside world. They soon realize that these creatures are not the only threats that lie ahead of them. Alright, so I'm going to start by getting into the pros. Unsurprisingly, there are quite a few pros to be found here. One thing I have to say about the first film that made it so great is that it was such a unique experience. Not just because of the film and the story and the concept, but even when it came down to the theater experience, it was something very different. You usually have people who are eating popcorn, or they might whisper something, or might be rustling in a bag or something like that. Or even when it comes down to the audience, we're laughing, we're talking back to the screen, we're reacting in general. And in A Quiet Place, it was the complete opposite. It's like people were scared to even eat their popcorn. It was just quiet, and it was so disorienting because that's not usually what you get from a film. Even a slower moving film has a lot of sound going on. And so it was something quite different to experience in a theater. So then when we did experience sound, it was all the more kind of jolting because it was like, wait a minute, we've gotten so accustomed to all this quiet that when it does hit, it hits hard and it catches you off guard and makes you all the more tense. So it was a really great experience, and going into this, I was absolutely excited for there to be a follow-up. First things first, I have to say that I love how this film has opened up its world. In the first film, everything was confined to the farm and the farmhouse and just that isolated area. It was very much confined to that. And it added to the tension because it's like, how do you not make noise? And how do you escape from a space that's this big when you have these beings and creatures walking around that are just waiting for you to make the slightest noise? So that was something really great, but it's also cool that we get to open up the world and we get to see what the world actually looks like in the wake of all this devastation. It actually reminded me of The Purge a little bit. Now, The Purge is a completely different type of film and story and all of that, but what I do find that they both have in common is that they both have these films that revolve around these huge concepts that have kind of redefined and shaped society. And in both the first films, everything takes place in a very confined space, in a house, very claustrophobic, very tight, as all these scary and unexpected things are happening. And then in both sequels, The Purge, Anarchy, and then A Quiet Place Part 2, we get to venture out and we see more of, okay, this is what this looks like. This is how the world has been affected. This is how this affects this person, and all these different facets of society. And that's something I really appreciated and was so happy to see here. I have to say, I really enjoyed the opening scene. Now, although I personally didn't mind the little hints of the backstory we got in the first film, I was actually fine with that. I did think it was really great that we literally got to see it from day one, seeing it all unfold and seeing just the, there's not even a word for it, but just seeing the experience of this completely unexpected, devastating thing happening to this town, in this society, and the fallout from that. I thought it was really, really great. And of course, when that whole sequence started, realizing what the setting was, and also realizing how that tied directly into the first film, and I was just like, oh man, I felt the pain all over again. It all came rushing back to me. And I also like the full circle of that, what we see first in the first film and then what we see first here in the second film. I thought that was so great, especially the foreshadowing aspect of that. And then jumping to the present, I like that we immediately pick up where we left off at the end of the last film. There was no jumping ahead several months, weeks, years. No, it was okay, now we're continuing on. And I like that because it also made it feel like this is just another chapter, of course, of this story. It didn't feel like there was this disconnect between the first film and the second, but they actually felt like two parts of a whole. One complements the other, and they both are telling one big story. I really, really like that. And much like the first film, I also really enjoyed the score. The score here was created by Marco Beltrami, who is a renowned composer and conductor of film and television scores, especially in the horror genre. It's really easy to watch a lot of horror films and then in your mind kind of file it under scary music. But no, there's still something very intentional about the mood that's created for each individual film, horror or otherwise. And I think he does such a great job with the score in this film as well as the first. I thought it was so atmospheric and so haunting. And what's really funny is that I had to step out to go to the restroom and come back. And as I was walking back into the theater, I could hear the score. And although I literally knew I'm just walking back into the theater, for a brief second I was kind of like, okay, do I need to watch my back? And like, what's going on here? And it's funny that just for that brief moment, it brought me back into that feeling, even though I wasn't in the film, I wasn't experiencing those things, but I still felt the mood, I felt the tension, and I immediately kind of like got tense just hearing it. So he absolutely did a great job with that. And once again, if you guys have the time, please go check him out. Marco Beltrami, his resume, extensive. That man, no joke. We have everyone back from the first film: Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmonds, Noah Jupe. They all do a great job, but who I absolutely loved and appreciated seeing in this film, Millicent Simmonds. Just seeing the progression of her character from the beginning of the first film and all of her grief and conflict and just her really trying to grapple with her identity and what life is meant to look like going forward. And then seeing, of course, what she goes through with the rest of her family. And now her journey here, it was really something to see. Just seeing her really come into her own and become this leader and this heroine. And not only did I appreciate that Millicent Simmonds, who was a deaf actress, I love that there's that representation here and that her experience and her identity as a deaf person is reflected in the dynamics of sound in the film. There are so many moments where we're seeing it from her perspective and what it would almost be like for her. And although we can't experience it in the same way, the fact that the film honors that and focuses in on that, and we see the parallels of sound, the creatures, Reagan, and all these things happening throughout the film. I love, even with the first film to now, I love how they use sound and just these varying dynamics between the characters, between this world, and how that works all together. I absolutely love that. I also have to say, I really enjoyed Cillian Murphy in this film. I know that with new characters, sometimes it's like, I don't know, is this gonna work? We've come to identify with these three, and we've seen what they've been through. And so now that his character was in the picture, I was kind of like, I don't know, but oh my gosh, he absolutely sold me on Emmett. I absolutely related to Emmett. I understood his struggle. I understood his torment. And over time, I really came to identify and understand his character. And I actually appreciated and cared about his character. And I was so grateful that the other characters in the film had him to rely on. It almost was a relief, considering everything that happens. So I think he did an awesome job. I think Cillian Murphy is such an underrated actor. My introduction, of course, to him was in 2005's Red Eye with Rachel McAdams. That was an interesting film, and it was a really, creepy introduction to him, but he did a great job in that. He did an awesome job as Scarecrow in the Dark Knight trilogy, in Inception, and as the central lead character in Peaky Blinders. Awesome, awesome actor. So glad he's a part of this. I'll also say that this film doesn't waste time really getting into the thick of things. I promise. I went to go see this with my mom, and I would say about maybe like 30 to 40 minutes in, she turned to me and she was like, I'm tired. She's like, so much went on. I'm just like, I need to catch my breath. So that ought to let you know that there's a lot that happens. So this definitely isn't a slog. It's not like a slow pace building up. No, there's stuff that happens, and very quickly too. So now I'm gonna jump over to the cons. Not a whole lot of cons here, but just a few worth mentioning. As I said before, I appreciated seeing the different dynamics here with all the different characters, and I like seeing that different characters took center stage here. I will say Emily Blunt's character, Evelyn, I wish she had had a little bit more to do. I appreciated Emily Blunt's performance, especially her facial expressions and her eyes, and so there was so much she brought to this without having to do a lot. But I think given how short the runtime was, I wish there could have been just a little bit something for her to have done outside of what we saw. It wasn't bad, but I just wanted a little more from her. I will say there were a couple of things in the film that didn't make sense plot-wise. I can't spoil what it is, but I will say that it deals with the character and their mobility and the choices that they make a little later on in the film. It just kind of felt like I'm not really understanding why that choice was made. I understand we have to move the story along, but for me, it didn't make sense why the character did what they did and the situation they ended up in because of that. Hopefully, if you've seen it, you understand what I'm talking about, but yeah, I'll just leave it there. Now, I have to say that I am definitely a Djimon Hounsou fan, and I was so glad to see him here. In the few moments that he is on screen, I was so into it. I enjoyed seeing him and hearing from him. He's always been a great actor, from Amistad to Gladiator to Blood Diamond and many other films. So I was so happy that he was a part of this. However, I absolutely did not appreciate the extremely lazy way in which his character was handled. Once again, I can't say much without spoiling, but I was not pleased. I just think if you have someone this talented, really make the most of that, and I don't feel like they did that. And then as far as the ending, it wasn't a huge con for me because I could see both sides of it. I will say that the ending is somewhat abrupt, which I somewhat expected because the first film ended in a similar fashion. And of course, considering how this film played out, I'm pretty sure that ending it that way is going to play into a third film, which is fine. But I can understand a lot of people watching this and feeling like, oh, okay, no, just a little bit more, no, okay, oh, all right, it's over. So yeah, so not a bad thing, but I just can understand the frustration of it being abrupt, especially because we become so engrossed in this world and we just kind of assume that it's going to end in a more finalized way and it's a little more abrupt. But like I said, I did expect that given what happened in the first film's ending. So I'm going to go ahead and give A Quiet Place Part 2 an A. This was a solid film. This was a solid sequel. This was one of the rare sequels that was at least as good as the first, if not better. And I really appreciated how well this was made. And it really is hard to say which one is better. I think they're about on the same level playing field because, as I said, they feel like two parts of a whole, you know, so it's hard to have one without the other. But I think because we get so much more in the second, I can see why people would think that this is the superior film, but I think they're both pretty great. The only thing I would say with the sequel is that we lose that sense of claustrophobia and the confined spaces of the first film, and of course the original experience of what is this about and what's up with these creatures and what's going on. At this point, we know what's going on, so that takes just a little bit away from it, but not in a way that ruins the film. Like, it's still a great film. It's just that now we know, and it's a different kind of experience, but it's a unique experience in its own way. And if you have the chance, I would absolutely recommend you see this in a Dolby Theater. I went, I enjoyed it. It is definitely the type of film that benefits from a Dolby Theater experience, or even just a theater experience in general. Just hearing that sound and how well it plays within the theater. That's so great. Just being in the theater and hearing the sound and it adding to the atmosphere and the tension and the whole feeling of the film, it's really great. So if you have the opportunity, if you feel safe enough, I would absolutely recommend you give it a shot. Go ahead and watch it and allow yourself to have that experience and really get wrapped up, get lost in this film because it absolutely was a great experience for me. A Quiet Place Part 2 is now playing in theaters. You guys feel free to check it out, leave your thoughts below, and let me know what you think. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you at the movie.